Good morning, everybody. My name is Ana Maria Leonard. Welcome. Welcome to McAllen's first ever Census Solutions Workshop. Before we get started, I want to say thank you to the City of McAllen Complete Count Committee and the McAllen Police Department for lending us their wonderful facility to use today. I'd like for those of you who are on the McAllen Complete Count Committee to please raise your hand so that we can acknowledge you. Thank you for being here today. Assisting me today is my coworker, Blanca Ramirez Salazar from Nebraska. She covered the Rio Grande Valley back in 2017 and the first part of 2018 when we didn't have staff here, and then I got hired and Blanca went back home to serve her 3 states that she manages, which is Nebraska, South Dakota, and North Dakota. So she has a very different climate than we do. And today we have 2 partnership specialists that are on my team and cover the Rio Grande Valley and some northern counties. Albert, would you introduce yourself, please?
Hi, good morning, everyone. Albert Morales. I'm the partnership specialist for Hidalgo County, and my primary role is to service all of the municipalities in the county in this area. Good to be here.
And good morning, my name is Marta Ortiz. I am based in Cameron County. We work a little bit, we stretch our territory a bit, and I work with community-based, faith-based, and health-based organizations.
And before we go around and have all of you introduce yourselves, we want to share some of the goals of today's workshop. You have some material in front of you to help you take notes and some resources that we're going to use today. Our goals today are to form new types of partnerships, come up with new types of solutions to challenges that exist with the 2020 census, have organizations such as yourselves commit to activities that support the 2020 census, and connect partners and participants to one another and grow the partner network. We'll demonstrate the importance of the 2020 census today and identify ways that your organization can help boost participation among the hard-to-count populations. As you've heard me say in the past, you're experts in the community. We have unofficially entitled you Census Ambassadors. And this is meant to be a collaborative process and work together. In terms of the flow of the workshop, we'll continue with introductions. I'll do a presentation. We'll give some basic information about the 2020 census. So some of you have heard this ad nauseum and some of you have not. And we'll have a small brainstorming session to determine potential action items to address the hard-to-count populations. At the end of the workshop, we'll have action items that you have identified from your organizations, and you will have the tools to implement those actions in your community. So let's start with introductions. Can we start here in the front?
Hi everyone, I'm Jennifer Bishop from MHP 7. Good morning, my name is Esli Reyes from MHP 7.
Ed Taylor with the McAllen Complete Count Committee.
My name is Vanessa Davila, and I'm with MHP Selly. Hi, Associate Motor with the City of McAllen Complete Count Committee.
Steve Capsados, City of McAllen Health and Code Enforcement, and part of the Complete Count Committee as well.
Hi, Leslie Holland, member of the McAllen Complete Count Committee.
Hello, my name is Eva Gonzalez, and I'm the Director of Research Development and Communications for the Boys and Girls Club of McAllen.
I'm Rebecca Stalker. I'm the Director of Hope Family Health Center in McAllen.
Good morning, Olga Gabriel, Texas A&M Health Science Center, McAllen campus, and on the committee as well.
Piedad Martinez with the Census Complete Count Committee.
Nedra Knurp, President of Futura RTV, and on the McAllen Complete Count Committee.
Alexa Echols on the library.
I'm Inosa from the McAllen Complete Count Committee.
Good morning, buenos días. My name is Marta Sanchez, and I'm with La Unión del Tolentero.
Jocelyn Lucendes, I'm from Rice.
There you go. I'm from Rice.
Delilah Garcia, Media Specialist for the U.S. Census Bureau.
Mark Vega, McAllen Public Utility.
Carla Montemayor from the Public Esmeralda Munguia from the County Council of
Welcome. Welcome, everybody. So we know that you all are very busy. We have a 3-hour workshop today. Thank you for taking time out of your schedules to come and be with us today. I'm going to go over some basic information about the 2020 census. If you already know this, that's great. And if you don't, please take notes because we really are counting on you to share the information within your community and educate your community about the importance and the relevance and also what is the census. So we're going to talk a little bit about why we do a census, why it is vital for states, of course the important topic of confidentiality, how we respond to the census, what are some key dates, and the program that I manage, which is the partnership program. As you all know, the 2020 census is a constitutional mandate. Article 1, Section 2 of the U.S. Constitution states that there shall be an enumeration of the total population, actually including the territories, every 10 years, and that is to count everyone living in the United States. And the census date is April 1st of 2020. And we conduct a decennial of population, and in case you all were wondering, there is a question about housing on the 2020 census. It's kind of towards the beginning of the form. We disseminate the counts to the president in December of 2020. And some of the reasons that we complete the form and the uses of it are most importantly for a portion, and that means representation for the U.S. House of Representatives for our area. We distribute federal dollars to states. Federal funding, $675 billion every year gets distributed to the states in the nation, and that is determined with census data. We draw congressional and state legislative districts, school districts, and voting precincts. A lot of people know that it determines congressional seats, but a lot of people don't know that it's used for school districts and for voting precincts. So, you know, that's very important as well. What do we call it? I forget, when they draw the lines.
The redistricting.
Redistricting, yes. Enforce voting rights and civil rights legislation. The data informs planning decisions of federal, tribal, and state and local government. Inform organizational decisions such as where do businesses set up. They do it based on demographic data that comes from the U.S. Census Bureau. So you all at any time can ask questions. We'll go ahead and write down the questions on these little blue notepads. Martha and Albert will go ahead and tabulate them and put them up, and we'll be able to answer all of your questions a little bit later today. So confidentiality, the U.S. Census Bureau follows what is called Title 13 and Title 26. So Title 13 protects all the information that is on your form, and the results are only recorded in statistical format. So if you go onto the U.S. Census website and look up the city of McAllen, it's going to give you the retail power purchasing of the resident. It's going to give you the average education. It's going to give you the average income, but that's just an average. It doesn't identify anybody individually. Us as census employees, we take an oath, and we are sworn for life to protect the information of the census. In partnership, we don't have access to that information anyway, but if we did, we would make sure that we protect the information. Any employee who discloses confidential data is subject to a term of up to 5 years imprisonment and a $250,000 fine. I think one thing that we don't mention here is that the information from the Census Bureau can be requested by, for example, Ed Taylor. He can go on to our website and fill out a form, pay a small fee, and he can request his census records for where he's been residing for the past,
how many years?
40 years.
Yeah.
40 years. I didn't want to share that. And he can also request information about his ancestors. So when you fill out a census form for every 10 years, so the decennial, that information doesn't get released until 72 years later. So I know that all of you probably know what Ancestry.com is, and you know, all of those databases, that's based on census data. So after 72 years, you can go ahead and look that up. But if you want information about yourself, you can request that directly from the Bureau. And there's just a small fee and you fill out a form. We have the form in case you want it. That helps establish where you've been residing in the US. It's legal proof.
Legal proof.
Yes. So what's new for 2020? A little bit later, we're gonna do a really cool exercise that examines the difference between 2010 and 2020 census. But to let you all know, now we have amazing use of technology. So we have internet-based responses, telephone-based, and paper form. So we're using this now. We also are going to have a software that tells us how your community is responding by tract. So you'll be able to see by tract what the percentage rate of response is for your city. And this will help you with your efforts. We also, for the first time, are allowing the community to apply to work for us online. We need a pool for the 4-county area of over 8,000 applicants for the operations that are coming up next year. So we need to have that pool. What we don't know at this time is how many people we're going to hire for next year's operation, which is called update lead and on-response follow-up, because we don't know what the response is going to be. So more people respond over the internet and over the phone, less people that we need to go door to door, right? Because they've already responded. So it's very important to have that applicant pool ready of qualified candidates so that if we need them to go out there, we have them ready to hire them, okay? And we have selections that are gonna start in December. And we know here in the magical Rio Grande Valley, we love to take what, a week, 2 weeks off in December for the holidays. So we need to make sure that we make the push for the jobs this fall before we start calling people to select them for hire, okay? And I touched on this briefly. When does census response start? March the 12th. Ends on July the 31st, and these are 3 different ways to respond: internet, phone, or by mail. Internet will be a URL. We don't have it yet. You can go to 2020census.gov and it'll become live and it'll be available there, but we don't have the URL just yet. By phone, you'll be able to call in. They'll help you with 13 different languages, including English. So members of our community that are, don't speak Spanish, they'll be able to respond as well. And what I believe is that the call center is going to be in Irving, Texas. So we'll have Texans answering Texans, right? And the form processing center is going to be in Arizona. So when people mail their form in, it'll go to a processing center in Arizona. Welcome, welcome, take a seat. And the last one is in the mail. So traditionally, people receive the forms in the mail. We are asking that as you all educate your communities, that you tell them that if they receive a form in the mail, but go to the McAllen Library, for example, and want to fill it out online, don't want to mail it back, bring the form anyway, because there's a unique identifier on there that when they complete it, we want them to enter it. It's not required. Remember back in 2010, if you didn't have the form and that identifier, you couldn't participate. This is different this time. You don't have to have it to go online, and you don't have to have it when you call over the phone. Okay, it's not required. But we would prefer that you do have it, because if you do, our online system that updates the number of the response percentage by tract will respond faster, right? Because it's tied to that number. And it's also tied to a very specific address that we have in our master address list. Okay, any questions about that? I know that gets kind of confusing and into geography. So, yes?
I just had this question to Albert. What happened to the people that you have mailboxes in the map? It says in 2010 they didn't receive a questionnaire. So is these people are local? Is these people, how does it determine? Because we're trying to determine who are we going to be our targets to go and work in those communities. And so we wanted to get where our resources are best used. But that particular pack, it says, well, they didn't get questionnaires in 2010. What does that mean?
So they didn't get them because they have post office boxes?
I imagine, I don't know, but do you track map? That's what it says. When you click on the track, and it says, and it's not darker red, because it's the red is the least people that responded to the questionnaire, right? But these ones are not deeper red, you just click in some areas, and then it says, these people do not got a questionnaire.
So I really can't speak to
No,
2010. Go ahead.
I think you're talking about those, the information isn't available for the red areas.
You're right. What does that mean?
And that's on that, the roam,
Blanca
right?
can answer that.
It's the red thing, right?
Yes.
They didn't collect the data to be able to tell you what the count back was.
So what we are measuring is a self-response,
Right.
right? So in order to do that, so back in 2010, you had to have received a questionnaire in the mail, or there were other operations like we're talking about update, leave, you just, drop it off.
Right.
The operation that was also used in our region at that point in time was called update enumerate, which meant
Right.
you had an enumerator physically go to that address and then complete the information on the spot. All of those addresses were not included in this self-response because they didn't have an opportunity to self-respond. It's only the ones that were, either mailed the questionnaire and they completed it, so the mail out, mail back. And then the other part was that update leave. We left it, and then they completed it on their own and sent it back in. So that is why in this tool that we use, and I'm thinking it's the same tool, Response Outreach Area Mapper, you will see areas, and like some of the Colonia areas, but also we see that in a lot of tribal areas and some rural areas in other parts of the country, is that there was a different method that was used to collect the information. So clearly, you can't include that in the calculation of self-response. This time around though, we have online and telephone, so nobody needs to wait around for us to actually even physically go to their door. For those areas you're talking about, somebody's gonna go over there for the most part.
And today, we're gonna come up with ideas on how we can best serve that population. So I'm not gonna answer the question yet, because we're gonna create ideas today, and we're gonna make sure that we have a way for them to respond, okay? So just hold on to that thought, everybody. Okay, so the timeline is very important. We're 195 days, I think, away, or 194. I think on Tuesday was 196. What are we today? Thursday? So 194. So individual housing units are going to get mailable, only mailable addresses are going to get the actual form, right? We do have a timeline that's going to give them like prompts to respond. So by March 12th, they'll receive postcards in the mail. Remember, this is only applicable to non-PO boxes. Only USPS mailable addresses for a physical housing structure. Does that make sense? And cluster boxes will get them because they're recognized by the post office as a mailing address. Because we had that question in Stark County in Colonias Unidas. So, hand delivery to housing units is an operation called Update Leave that does begin in 2020. We leave the questionnaire. We have been told that we will have Spanish here in our 4-county area. So the questionnaire should be in English on one side and Spanish on the other, the paper form, okay? Remember, when they go online, they can answer, I believe, in Spanish as well. And then when they call over the phone, they can answer completely in Spanish. Like I said, March 12th is the beginning. Self-response is open March 12th all the way to July 31st. We encourage that even if we help them respond using a computer or a phone, that they respond themselves. Because only they know who's really living in that household. They know if Pedro comes and lives there 8 months out of the year, and then he leaves back to Michigan, or whatever the situation is, they know who's living there, right? And we need to make sure that all the populations get counted. We're gonna talk about that a little bit later. So any questions about this? We do have a, yes, Steve.
How do you handle undeliverable postcards from the initial mailing?
So what I know from geography is they get kicked back, and we have that information, but I'm not sure what happens after that. But they do get kicked back.
Like Steve was saying, we do, when I was working at the city, we do thousands of mail outs using the tax roll, and you always get undeliverables.
Right.
And you go out there and you say, that's a good address, what's wrong with it? You go out there in the field and the address is there, you can never figure out why it came back, right?
Right.
So.
So let's
probably
put
will
that
get
on our
this-
list
you'll
of
probably get that
ideas
same problem.
so that we can make sure that we address how to reach those people, that we get the address, you know, the mailbacks.
Yeah, it's a mail delivery problem, and also you'll get, it's obvious, people get the wrong questionnaire in the wrong mailbox.
Well, remember the questionnaire or the information that goes out to the household will not have a name.
It has an address though.
Yes.
What I'm saying is.
Oh, they put in the wrong
They
ad-
put it in the wrong box.
address. Yes,
Yeah.
yes. So we'll work on that. We'll work on some ideas. Okay, so some key dates you all want to write down and make sure you share with the community is April 1st. It's our reference point, right? So the official date for census. Does that mean that you can't start responding on March the 12th? No, it just means that if you cannot determine your primary residence for the year, you use April 1st to determine where you live. So I travel a lot for work. I'm gone, you know, I used to be gone about 2 weeks and a half every month, right? So I was going to Dallas, right, to Irving. So I could have put my hotel and myself if I were there on April 1st. But Hidalgo County is my primary residence and I reside in Hidalgo County more than 6 months out of the year. Although last year was a little bit iffy. Okay, so April 1st. And April 1st is also used for group quarters. So like prisons, hospices, nursing homes, what is the other one? Like boarding schools. They use April 1st to determine who's living there and that's who gets counted. Does that make sense? And we do that by a different process where the Bureau calls the facility, gets a list of the people living there, and then they turn it into us. We don't go bed to bed and count how many people are in a facility. Yes?
How about the kids in the dorms in the university? Do they get counted on April 1st in the dorm where they live in?
Yes.
They can't even, or
Yes.
where the family lives?
No. And that's a very common misunderstanding. College kids need to get counted where they're going to school and living in the dorm. They don't get counted back home. So if you have a college student here from the Rio Grande Valley who's going to school at UT Austin and they live in the dorms at UT Austin, guess what? They get counted at UT Austin. They don't get counted here in Hidalgo County, even though their parents are claiming them on their tax return. So this is not tied to your tax return, it's tied to your primary residence for a majority of the year, so more than 6 months out of the year. Okay? And we do have a process where we verify that. We have a question?
So they're gonna have to do their own census form?
Yes. Yes.
My son, he's in Laredo.
Yes.
University.
Yes. He will be counted in Laredo for next year. Yes. Very good. Mid-April, we start early non-response follow-up. That's for students in surrounding college areas. We start early non-response follow-up because we're concerned that by May, they might go back home, right? So we want to catch them. And then December 31st, 2020, we deliver the census counts to the president, and that it becomes official information for all sorts of uses. So like I mentioned earlier, we have jobs that we need to fill. We do have requirements to work for the Bureau. You must be 18 years and older. You must be a U.S. citizen. You must have an email address, a valid one. You must be able to use technology, so a computer, a laptop, a tablet, a smartphone. You must have reliable transportation. And you must be willing to work. Although the enumerators do choose their schedule, they work evenings and weekends. They get approximately, okay, $12 an hour to do our training. And then when they go out into the field, another approximate salary is $14 an hour. And that varies depending on your county, depending on your territory. So it may vary throughout the Rio Grande Valley. Okay? They get paid weekly and they do not have any kind of benefits. It's just hourly wage. Okay? Any questions on the jobs? Yes.
Do you want that promoted? I mean, does that information still need to get out? Is there like a flyer? Or do you want an advisory on that? Are you still?
As much as you want to promote it, if you want to promote it every week, we would love to. I know we're scheduling a job fair with the library coming up real soon. We're working with Workforce in Cameron County to have some job fairs as well. So we really, really need to push. Yes, yes, and we can share that information with you. Yes.
Is there any exceptions to being employed by the Census Bureau?
So there aren't any in regards to citizenship. So in 2010, we did have a waiver that allowed resident aliens to work for the Bureau. Right now, we have no accommodation for that. So can you touch a little bit on that and also on
Hannah?
Yes,
Yeah.
please.
So in terms of waivers on the U.S. citizenship, we don't have that waiver yet. We had it in 2010, but every state, and I don't know where Texas is because I don't cover Texas, but every state can determine, so state government and DHHS can determine whether they are going to exclude census income for TANF benefits and other, social service benefits. I don't know, again, where Texas stands, but headquarters has been contacting since February. They sent out a letter to the top officials in every state, giving them, it's called an opt-in letter, opt-in or opt-out. And I know, at least in my 3 states, they've opted in, and that's all getting worked out. But even when you get, if the state does say that they're going to opt in, it's really important, and this is something that we check into. So even if we have a state that says yes, I want to know is how they're going to get that information out to their clients, right? Because if they're not pushing out that information, then their clients are not going to be aware that there is a possibility for them to work for Census. So that's something that we're working with behind the scenes whenever we do have a state that says that they opt in.
And I'll follow up because I know we got the information, but the federal government is basically telling the state, you decide if you want this to be an option for you. And once we get that information, we can let you know so that you can tell your community, if you receive TANF benefits and you want to work for the Bureau, it's not going to count against you and you're not going to lose your benefits. So that motivates people to work for us, right? It's a good thing. But we need to follow up with the state because if the state chose to opt out, then that will not apply. And we need to make sure we educate the community correctly because we don't want there to be a negative impact on them and then they say we didn't educate them correctly, right? So partnerships. So back in 2010, there were 3 partnership specialists for the 4-county area. Now we're at 6 for Hidalgo and 4 for Cameron and 1 for Star. So we're at 11. So triple what we had in 2010. So the U.S. Census Bureau, over the 12 states that we cover, have over 300, right, PSs?
For the
12 states?
The 12 states?
PS?
Yes.
Over
A
300.
little over 300.
And I think for the nation total will be about 1,500. So they really invested a lot of money in these positions, which are professional level positions, to make sure that we educate all of you on the importance of the census and to make sure that you all implement actual activities and action items to get the community to respond, to feel safe and have the knowledge to respond. So those are just some pictures. We didn't put any local pictures, I have tons, but you all know what a complete count committee is. You've been appointed by the mayor, you're volunteers, you're helping spread the message, you're coming to the meetings, you're at Crime Stoppers at the McAllen Business Expo sharing census information. You're on the float, right, Ed, for the City of McAllen Parade on the census float to share the message. You're really, really branding, right? What do they say? That you have to hear a message 7 times, right, Steve, before you can absorb it and then take action. So we have to inundate our community with census. And our main focus is to count the hard-to-count populations. So who can give me an example of a hard-to-count population?
South McAllen, Balboa area.
Okay.
Area with
A demographic.
A demographic.
Elderly, very good. What would be another hard-to-count population?
Low-income area.
Children, rural, very good. What else? Non-English speaking, newborn babies, yes, 'cause they can't write down their information themselves, right? Immigrant population, so foreign born, right? What else? What else can we think of? What's something that's very common here in the Rio Grande Valley? The mobile population. Renters. Winter Texans are not very hard to count. The thing is that sometimes a lot of them don't live here more than 6 months out of the year, so they count back home. But they're pretty engaged.
Migrants?
Migrants, yeah, because of the calendar, right? Yes, Nandra?
The homeless.
The homeless, yes, thank you very much, yes. So we do have a lot of hard to count populations in the Rio Grande Valley. People who have more than one housing structure on their property, highly mobile, foreign born, limited English, children, elderly, a low income, right? So high poverty, low educational attainment, and I think that's all of it. Homeless.
Blind.
I'm sorry?
Disabilities, blind.
Disabilities, yeah. So a lot of challenges. Yeah. Okay, so just for funding, we know that over $675 billion federal dollars get distributed. I don't have the document with me today, but we do have a really nice document. It's like, I don't know, 80, 100 pages. But really what you need to know is in the first 5 pages. And basically it's a table, and it has a graph, and it has over 126 different federal programs that get monies distributed to them. And some examples include, and chime in guys if you want to, Title I, so free and reduced lunch, CHIP, Medicaid, Medicare, federal financial aid, including Stafford loans and Pell Grants, USDA, FDA, what else? What am I
Disaster
missing?
relief.
Disaster relief, community service agency, the ones that help with electricity bills.
Preservation of arts and humanities.
Yeah.
Community block grants.
Oh yeah, CDBG, of course, absolutely. So 126 different federal programs. Those are just some of the big ones, right, that we know of. The programs for the schools, bilingual ESL, that's federal funding. Title I, like I said, free and reduced price lunch. The service for the disabled. Yes.
Childcare?
Childcare, like the Hidalgo County Head Start program, right? What used to be TMC, Workforce Solutions, and TMC is now CDI, Texas Migrant Teaching and Mentoring Communities, that used to be Texas Migrant Council. So, you know, federal funding is of, you know, utmost importance. And something that we don't think about when we think about federal funding getting distributed to the Rio Grande Valley and to social services is that, guess what? You know, if you're getting paid by a federal grant, you're investing that money back in the community, right? You shop at HEB, you shop at the mall, you go to Firestone or Walmart, and so you're reinvesting those federal monies. People who work at a hospital, you know, they receive a high amount of billings for Medicare and Medicaid. So could you honestly say that a nurse is probably being subsidized by federal funding? Absolutely, right? And what are they doing with their paycheck? Well, they're paying bills and spending money. So, you know, federal funding makes the community really work and turn. Okay, so that was just a brief overview. It wasn't really, you know, very, very in-depth, but it's just to tell you the basics about the 2020 census. That's my information. I think most of you have it. I also have business cards today. I'll leave them in the back so y'all can get the information. But we're gonna move on to the next activity. And it's gonna be a fun one. So Martha, will you be the scribe? Okay, and grab the board. We're gonna do the activity that's called It's Not 2020 Anymore. It's not 2010 anymore, sorry. Typo. Okay. So we're gonna start in the back of the room, and we're gonna ask you all, and we're gonna write down up here, what is different from 2010 to 2020? And I don't mean just from the census point of view. I mean, did you get a hybrid from 2010 to 2020? Do you not have a laptop anymore? Now you have a Chromebook? Or you have a very fancy phone now compared to 2010? and you use apps. So what has changed in the past 10 years that could have an impact on the census? How many of you watch regular TV? And how many of you only watch Netflix, Prime, and Hulu, and all those other things, and never turn on regular TV ever, right? That's a huge difference from 2010 to 2020. Oh, you can run on there. Yeah, so just go ahead.
Can we pull the screen up by any chance? Or does it stay down?
No.
Maybe on that. There's a button in it.
Okay, so in 2010, I'll start you all off. In 2010, could you respond to the census on the internet?
No.
Okay, so for 2020, over here you would put internet. And 2010, it would be paper form. What's the difference in society that has happened within the past 10 years that is, existing in our community?
Increase in
Social media? So 2020 social media, Marta? So Facebook, right? Twitter. Can we get our message out with social media better now? Well, that's pretty good. Anybody else?
What about the new, like WhatsApp and all those?
All the applications, right? All the applications on the phone. Yeah, the things you can download. WhatsApp, Snapchat, all of those messengers. What else is different in 2020?
You mentioned the streaming services as opposed to traditional.
Oh yeah, so very limited TV use and now streaming, which is dependent on internet access, right? So we're more dependent on internet. Anybody else?
Well, everyone carries a phone with them.
Yes, a smartphone.
They didn't do it to this extent 10 years ago.
So the dependence of smartphones.
Even children.
Even children, that's right.
And tablets.
And tablets being more common instead of laptops, right, or desktops. It's okay, put it right on the window as misspelled. Okay, not the end.
Not dependent.
You didn't put the
Oh.
NC. Sorry, I used to teach grammar. What else? See, any ideas? What's different between 2010 and 2020? Knowledge?
Knowledge has increased.
Okay, so maybe like a higher educational attainment rate for our students? So maybe more bachelor's level graduates, maybe, and associate's level? So do we have a higher percentage of educated in the Rio Grande Valley? Probably, right? Educational attainment, very good.
Yeah, and going along with that, there just seems to be like more information fluidity. Before there were just, really big op-eds of just a complete lack of information access. But because of all those things up there, things seems to be a lot more fluid and accessible.
Mm-hmm. So access to more information. Knowledge is power, right? Yes, Sandra?
On the negative side, there is more distortion of information. And this is very critical.
Misinformation, which we're also very concerned about at the Bureau, right? Because we want people to know that their responses are confidential. And sometimes a lot of people think that they're not, right?
Fake news.
Misinformation. We'll call it misinformation.
Well, we call it conspiracy things, right?
Yes.
That's your
Conspiracy theories.
conspiracy theories, right?
Yes.
Also, it's a lot less trust in the federal government.
Yes.
Distrust.
Increased distrust in the federal government. Yes, very good.
I think I'm gonna say that we've gotten faster as a society.
Okay.
We're
Faster pace?
Yes, and more busy maybe.
I worked in Dallas a lot, and you would say that that doesn't apply to the Rio Grande Valley, but yes, I know what you mean. It's still a little bit slower here, but yeah, faster paced, faster lifestyle. Anything else you want to include that because we're going to consider these aspects when we start coming up with your ideas for you all to implement. Yes, Sandra?
We have a different definition of family.
Yes. Yes, the family unit.
I
think in 2010, we had more engagement person to person, and now we don't have as much person to person interaction.
Oh, face to face.
Yeah.
It's more,
Yeah, there's not that much information.
yeah, it's more electronic. Yeah. Yeah, very good point. I hadn't thought about that. Face-to-face interaction is limited, right, than in 2010.
Do we
So-
have the same undocumented immigration back in 2010 as we have today? I don't
You
think
know,
so.
I don't have those numbers off the top of my head, but that would be something that we
I
could
think
look
for our
up.
area, we had a big influx, and it became more visible, or it was in the news more. So whether it was more or less, it seemed to be more in
I
the
might
news.
give you that as a homework assignment, Ed. You want to do a 10-year trend analysis of
Well,
immigration.
it's not really. It's something that is just very visible, right?
Yeah,
it was
become more
more. It was
Well, maybe that's something we can put on there.
Yeah.
Higher visibility in the Rio Grande Valley on a national level.
Yeah, on a national
Right?
level. Yeah.
Yes.
Marketing has moved online to a great extent.
Yes, so not as much newspaper, newsletters, town crier, right? That's where everybody used to get their news. Not anymore.
One of the things that we lost from 2010 to 2020 is the ability to advertise. People were advertising in local radios. Now it's national radio, so there's hardly any local, so people cannot utilize the radio station for advertising.
Write that down, because if you all can get on the news station and talk about census as a census ambassador on a radio station, that would be great for your committees. Yes.
Kind of to piggyback on what Ed had just said, the immigrant community, something that has changed is the sentiment towards immigrants, so that can affect whether they want to respond or not. And also, the social media, I think it's moved a lot into videos. So people like to see stuff more live, happening at the moment. as
Instead of
opposed to
reading.
Traditional posts.
Right, instead of reading, they wanted to see the action. Yeah. That's a lot of differences, right, from 2010? Mark?
I don't know if Amazon was around in 2010, but that's made a huge impact on retail sales in all over the country.
So the way we shop has
Right.
changed, right?
Shopping online.
Yeah.
Online shopping.
Mobility seems to be another area where, now people get from one place to the other and all of a sudden, where do I belong?
So highly mobile. Do we think that home ownership has changed? Is it harder to own a home now than it was in 2010?
Yes.
I don't know, I'm asking, what do you all think?
I just read something on that in the last day or two that seemed to reflect what you're saying.
I think ownership
a challenge.
is more difficult now.
Yeah.
We had a greater incentive in 2010 to purchase a home because of that housing tax break. Bought my home in 2010, and that's where I filled out my first census. With 2 people.
Kudos, yes.
I just wanted to add to what Jaime had mentioned. I wanted to comment that maybe because of that high mobility now, people are having a hard time trying to figure out where they identify, right? So they have like a kind of like a, I don't know if I belong here or I belong over there. Perhaps.
Yes. They don't know where to self-declare that they're living, right?
Yeah, because they don't know where they're supposed to identify, what area they're supposed to.
And that becomes a factor because they don't say, I'm a resident of Pinal County. They put down the address, right? But if they don't know if they should put the address of their mom or their friend where they've been sitting on their couch, then that becomes an issue because they turn it in and they really shouldn't have counted where they self-declare.
Just a little feedback on that, a little bit of planning department news. We have areas in McAllen that have Edinburgh and Mission zip codes. And so when people fill out their address, they have to put out Edinburgh, Texas, but they actually live inside the city of McAllen. And they out up north of 107. Tres Lagos was still, they made an exception for Tres Lagos and they got counted in McAllen with a 78504 zip code. And then you go past Taylor Road, you get into Mission zip code. So it's very confusing for people if their address, they're always putting the address, Mission, Texas, Edinburgh, Texas, well, where do you live? You live in McAllen? And we, in the planning department, fought for years, the post office, to get them to change the zip code, and every time they refuse. And if it's confusing for the resident, think about the businesses in the Edinburgh and in the Mission zip codes, but they're inside the city of McAllen corporate limits. And so we have problems with their sales tax going to other cities when actually they're
And
supposed
the
to be
good
going
thing
to.
about the census is that we got the addresses from the city.
But it's a mailing address, it's a zip code problem.
Yes,
The address is correct,
yes.
but the zip code is another city.
But what I'm saying, it will be counted
It'll be
within
counted.
McAllen because you
Right.
turn in the address to
That's the
us.
identification problem.
Yes.
Where do I live? Well, I live in Edinburgh, Texas. Oh, you don't, you live inside the city of McAllen. And it's been a problem, and
You'll get credit for it though. Okay, that's what I'm trying to tell
I
you.
mean,
You're
it's
good.
been, I mean. it
The
would
city of
be-
McAllen is good.
It would be
okay?
great for the Census Bureau to put pressure on the post office
Oh, that's a
to give
conversation.
us our
That's
zip
a
code.
conversation for later, Ed. We're not on camera. Okay, so,
And I
Martha,
have
yes.
one thing that I've been hit with, that because there's been a lot of discussion on race.
Yes.
People are really gonna have a hard time identifying themselves. Brown people are gonna have a hard time identifying as white.
Yes.
Because that's the line item, we were looking at the questionnaire, and a lot of people say, we are not gonna be counted in there because we are not. And so I think that that's a new thing, because we're gonna have to explain a lot on that, because
Yes.
people are having a hard time brown people identifying as
I
white.
think most
Because in the
Hispanics identify as white.
I know, but they're having a hard time.
There's
this
two,
time.
there's two categories on the form, right? It's your cultural identification, which for the Rio Grande Valley, over 90% are going to select Hispanic. And then it's another category, which is race, and you select more than one if you decide to. So if I want to, I can select white, black, and Chinese.
Yeah, and I think because of ancestry and all that,
Yes.
that's been a lot. I'm not white, I'm like, so I think that that's something new that we're gonna have to deal with.
Yes, but remember, it's self-declaration, so they can select whatever they like. But we wanna make sure that we educate them about Hispanic and then the race, because on the census quick facts, where it has all the different categories, they do identify Hispanic white and then white alone, which means no Hispanic, non-Hispanic white. Right, did you want to say something?
No, I just wanted to mention that, I think she's absolutely right about when we are out there communicating and educating populations about what race means in this country, and then, they go through this learning process and they realize, wow, well, I've been saying I've been white this whole time, but I may not be, I'm in some areas, we have the indigenous populations, areas that I cover, and they don't say that they're Native American, indigenous populations, and then they say they don't even want to say they're Hispanic, they're Native American. So, the concept of race in this country is different than where they're coming from, but the more and more we educate, means it complicates things. But it is great to make sure that we're educating our community members so that they can self-identify, they can determine for themselves what race and ethnicity they are, because those numbers are connected to dollars as well, to the different programs.
And I think you brought up a very good point, because we want to make sure they feel comfortable to identify however they like. We're just educating them about what it means, but if they feel that there are more than 4 races, they can select more than 4. We don't want to limit them and tell them, well, I think you're this, this, and this. No, we're just here to help you. You select what you identify as.
Yeah, in the past it was very easily, like just white, everybody was white.
That was the only option.
Yeah, it was the only option. And now, I just did my ancestry, and I'm 52% in Native American. So I now know that I can never, that I cannot be punching that white face, So a lot of people are having these conversations, and already, just by the sample questionnaire that we've been going over, people are like, I'm having trouble with just identify myself as white. So I said, well, then we're gonna have to look into what else do you identify. So I think that that's very new. Like in 2010, there was not that much conversations about that. But now, when people are identifying who they are and look into the DNA, it's a different conversation. And also, the national a conversation about, who is who in this country.
I like what Blanca mentioned just now, because she made a very good point. Remember that when the Rio Grande Valley applies for grants, you want to make sure that our population has identified their cultural background and their race, because that's a big factor when applying for national, state, and local level grants. So we really need to educate them on that.
Did you say that race now will have an option that says white, Hispanic?
So there's two separate questions.
Yeah.
One question asks about your cultural background,
Cultural and
and then a
race.
separate question just asks what your race is.
But on race specifically, is there something that says white/Hispanic, or
No,
it's just
It's
white?
because they're
combined,
two separate
yeah.
questions.
Two separate questions, one on race, all the different options, and then you get the ethnicity question. Ethnicity is, are you Hispanic, Latino, or not? And then what happens in data tabulation, then they take that information and say, so Hispanic, white, or Hispanic, African American, Hispanic, Asian.
But on the form, it'll be
Pacific.
two separate
It'll
questions.
Two separate questions, yeah.
So it'll be like white.
Oh, so when it populates itself, that's when if you place Hispanic and then white, then it'll say Hispanic white.
Yes.
But they
It gets tabulated together, but they're two separate
But then
questions.
it's populated for that purpose, like, okay.
So I'm gonna turn it over to Blanca. She's gonna talk about challenge statements, questions, and then we're gonna start, you all are gonna start getting into groups, and we're gonna start doing some work.
You didn't put too much under 2010.
We did it, didn't we?
So what should we put under
I didn't
2010?
put anything under 2010.
The unique identifier was required, remember? Maybe we didn't have enough Spanish forms, right?
There was update numeric.
Updated numeric, we don't have that anymore, that's right.
And I think-
2010, we watched regular TV, we read the newspaper, right? Who reads the monitor on paper form? I read it online. Wow, you also read it in paper form?
We don't have to.
And get your fingers all dirty? I love the online, the monitor of it.
Well, one thing that I've seen definitely change, so somebody mentioned marketing, right? So the billboards, so the billboard
Electronic
systems have
billboards.
changed. They're mobile billboards, on vehicles. And so you're seeing a lot more images that are kind of circulating throughout, just the streets. And so I attended, been working with higher education in my state, and I say, well, how do the students get information here? They said, well, we tore down all the actual, paper billboards, and now it's all digital, right? So those kinds of things have changed, and I'm sure they've changed here too, in terms of how folks are getting information. And all of these ideas right here that you have come up with, you want to take them to, so we're going to end up splitting up at some point here in a little bit, into some work groups, and then you're going to want to consider these ideas and others that you come up with in terms of what are those action items that you as organization can commit to, and as a group. So anyhow, I wanted to mention that about marketing because so much has changed. And Anna mentioned that, over there in Dallas, they think the Rio Grande Valley is maybe a little slower paced, but where I come from, this is super fast paced. So it's all a matter of perspective. And I'll tell you that I just really love being in this area and seeing the energy that you all have for your community. This was probably the best, I would say, training ground for me and for others who are coming and listening to the questions and trying to respond early on, because those questions are important. And so when I go back to my other areas, I was like ready for their questions. Oh, come on, I'm ready. We've already responded. So what we don't want is for you to get tired, for you to get, your energy level needs to stay high. And sometimes we get so caught up in the trenches that we can't look, from the 3,000 point view. And that's where we need you. Because even from my drive from the hotel here, that was a 20-minute drive, I thought this is totally different. And I know because I've been here, quite a few times. This is 90-some% Hispano Latino. So in some areas, they're saying, oh, the fact that you're Hispanic Latino, you are a hard to count population. Well, not here, okay? Totally different. And then I thought, what the challenges that you have here in terms of trying to figure out, well, how do we get information to like all the business community, right? You got all these businesses and then there's lots of billboards and that sort of thing. How do we get information so that census is everywhere? And we need census to be everywhere. There's a good team, a core team of people in the Rio Grande Valley now compared to 2010 for Census Bureau. But even that group of people is just not enough. That is why we need you. And so I just again want to thank City of McAllen and the CCC for pulling this together, because this is meant to re-energize you. And it's meant to help the CCC and help us always do a better job to think about things and implement actions and support your efforts as we get closer. And it's here. It's almost like having a baby, right? We got 8 months, 9 months left. On my team, I have a gal who's going to have a baby pretty soon, and she's using that analogy. You got to take care of it, right? You got to read to the baby. You got to massage it. But so for us, it is about supporting your efforts. And you started early on. Many areas are not even started yet, and that's a little scary. Okay?
Including San Antonio, in case you all were wondering. They barely passed their activities by their city commission, but they haven't started anything.
So sometimes you may feel like you're just not quite ready yet. You are ready. This is now we need to figure out how do we get to the masses, right? That is what we need to do right now. How do we get to the masses? The college students who live off campus, the children. You're getting to the many grandparents nowadays are taking care of their grandchildren compared to 2010. How do we get to them? I don't know, how large your foster parent or care program is in your area, but some areas is very, very high. How do we get to those networks, right? So working at that level is really, really important. So you've got a lot of energy, and we don't want to see you lose that, because I need you. And the reason I say that is, and Anna did not realize, whatever she was sending out to our coordinator team that the Valley was working on, so the City of McAllen, you got utility bills that have messages, census messages, right? You have, the float, okay? And then there's a tax, a message in the tax forms. I think that's released or it's coming out. So all of those are best practices. And one of your chairs back April of last year asked, well, how is it that in certain areas that I covered, why did their self-response rate was so high, like 77%, right? And it's just different over there, Right now they want to be counted. It's different. But guess what? We still have pockets that need the best practices from this area. So I've been sending up just the different types of, so like with the float. I said, oh, look what the Valley's doing. Look what McAllen did. Well, we ended up having a float in Omaha, Nebraska.
Yeah, they sent a picture of the float to DC, so that went national.
Yeah. And then South Dakota, they're working with the energy company, and that one's going to be a national partner because they cover several states. And so I said, oh, look at what the City of McAllen has done. And of course, you say City of McAllen, but you remove all information that they don't need and say, here's a message, just a simple message. Now they're all over that, and they're going to implement.
Well, also the script for Mayor Darling.
Oh, there's
he
another
was the
one?
first one to record a PSA for the Bureau. And, we wrote that script in our region for elected officials, and we did his in English, and Chief did the one in Spanish. So it's a great example for the nation.
When we look at this, a couple of things that we might be missing is more of a human perspective, is apathy. So it doesn't make any difference what race or ethnicity, what age you are. There's an apathy for people not to respond, just generally. So how to overcome apathy. Something also unique to the Valley is I think it's more of maybe a Hispanic thing, but there's a lot of veterans and recruitment into the armed services. People from the Valley do that more than I think in other areas of the country. And it goes to national pride. And here you have the Constitution requiring this, and it's for apportionment. And it comes down to, each person counts one. Everybody's one, right? You could be a billionaire, but you still count as one. And that goes, see, there's that veteran, patriotic spirit that the Valley has, which is really strong. Really, and it's unique down here. You go to other parts of the country and you don't see a national patriotic pride that the Valley has. Other places, it's kind of, they're not into the United States at all. Washington D.C., you know, it's part of the.
Yeah, I come from a long line of military family. My great uncles were in World War II.
Yes.
My husband's a Marine and Army combat medic. And what we did at the Bureau is we hired veterans to work in our department. So I have a veteran for Hidalgo, I have a veteran for Cameron, and I have a veteran that's coming on board soon in Corpus Christi. What we need to educate the community in regards to veterans, Ed, and I'm glad you brought this up, is that veteran status is not selected on the 2020 census form, the decennial, but guess which survey it's collected on? American Community Survey. And that's one where we have field reps go to the house, knock on the door and say, I'm gonna sit here with you and help you fill this out. It's like 10, 15 pages, but people need to fill it out. They turn them away or they decline, and then we don't have the veteran count on the quick facts as accurate because people decline to answer the form. And when I first met with the congressionals here in the Rio Grande Valley, that's what they told us. They said, we want a VA hospital. We need to get the census VA numbers up. And I said, well, that's for the American Community Survey, not the 2020
I'm
decennial.
thinking more of a motivational.
Oh, motivational.
Motivational factor,
Okay.
that the
Yeah.
Valley is inclined to respond.
Yes.
If it's a patriotic, it's a duty.
And in regards to the, like your civic duty, yeah.
It's
And in
your civic
regards
duty.
to the apathy, I think that us as a group right now, when we do our ideas, we can try to see how we can overcome that apathy. And one thing I heard from an employer was, we're gonna set up a computer in the staff lounge and we're gonna ask our employees nicely if they can go ahead and please fill out the form. So we wanna create some of those ideas to decrease the apathy. But I completely agree with you, it is your civic duty. Just remember that non-US citizens also get counted in the questionnaire, so they may not consider it a
Well, I mean, we
civic
have
duty, but
everything here.
yes.
The drumbeat is undocumented, everybody counts, the Hispanic, the poor, the
Yes.
everything that's the drumbeat of the census. But what is the positive force down here is that patriotic loyalty that, you know, I've served in the military.
Or my family
My
has,
family has
yeah.
served in the military, and you see that more here in the Valley than in other places. And in other places, you know, last thing I'm gonna do is join the Army. You know, and down here, hey, I'm gonna join the Army because, you know, and then football down here. This place here is football crazy, right? Because Dallas Cowboys, they're into that. It's almost like assimilation, but they're very football oriented. You go to other places in the country, and they're not that football oriented. They're more into basketball. You know, they're more. If you're, you know, you're into basketball. But the Valley is very football kind of thing.
You know, that might be an idea, you know, giving out Dallas Cowboy footballs, I don't know, to partners that have, you know, really implemented a lot of activities at their hospital or at their business to get people counted. Yeah, bringing in the high school football games, the jumbotrons, what?
Along those lines, we had an employee that just got called up to active duty. Probably won't be back for the census, but how does that work? Will they obviously go to county somehow?
So I'm not the subject matter expert on counting active duty, but I can get you that information because it becomes very, very detailed. It goes into like which is their base station, where did they go overseas, are they in a combat zone? It gets very complicated.
Does it involve the employer at all, or is that just strictly?
No,
Okay.
it doesn't, no. Yes?
You mentioned something about a business had a place in the
Staff lounge,
that they could do
respond to
census.
the census, yeah.
How much effort is our business subcommittee making if we could get businesses across the board to put something like that in the staff lounge? I mean, we talked about libraries and all these kinds of places, but if it's right there where you were.
And we have the largest employers. Yeah.
What have we done on that? Is that being addressed?
We can talk about that at one of our complete count committee meetings.
We've been already talking about that in the census day at the city of McAllen, allowing employees
employees enough time to respond to the questionnaire, to self-respond during working hours.
And you all have how many thousands of employees?
1,800?
Oh, 1,800.
I think that's the trick, is that it has to be during working hours, because I've noticed if we want to implement something at the Boys and Girls Club, if we give a time within the working hours, you're gonna have a much higher success rate. I don't know what that percentage is, but, you know, what I was wondering is, where is the line in terms of incentivizing? And I'm not talking about employers, but just as the community. Is there anything, you know, documented in terms of incentivizing individuals?
So you all, as private and public organizations, can incentivize all you want.
Okay.
We cannot.
Okay.
I can't give a census pin that I brought today to someone and say, can you please do your questionnaire? Here's a pin for you. I can't incentivize, right? But you all can. So if City of McAllen does a partnership with Chick-fil-A, and Chick-fil-A says, we'll give you 500 coupons for a free Chick-fil-A sandwich, idea. So you can give out at a mobile response site, you can. If the City of McAllen Library says, we'll give you, I don't know, popcorn, right? We'll give you a bag of popcorn to come in and do your questionnaire at the lab, there you go. Yes.
And also like the city of McAllen, the city of Alton has a food truck. And they're already partnering with us, so they can take the food truck and have the mobile unit where people can get counted. They're going to go to the food truck and get food after they fill out the census. So you know, things like that are possible. And think about the food trucks that you have here. Maybe somebody can ask them to incentivize some people and pushing the count.
So there's no limit to
Is there anybody in the school district here? Is there anybody here with the school district? Is there anybody in here right now, school district? Because I'm sure everybody, there probably needs to be, but another, I mean, for us to do early registration for McAllen IC, what they did this year, which was like such a success, they were saying the classroom from each grade level that had the first 100% completion of early registration got a pizza party. And my daughter like harassed me. I mean, she really did. And so I'm just, you know, like, if you get we all know this, right? If you get the pressure from your children to complete something, mom, sign this because I can't go, and then they ask you 100 times, there's a lot of power in children's voices in their homes that, you know, I know at the Boys and Girls Club, EGLA has great ideas for what we're going to do, and we're going to definitely leverage the power of a child's voice in their family. But I'm just wondering district-wide, when you have like 100% completion rates with an incentive, like, it's foolproof.
We're gonna write that down in those ideas, so I'll let,
in previous census, what they usually did for the schools, I mean, they always had the school campaign with the Census Bureau. But we had the elementary schools do a census poster contest. And the winner of the census poster contest got to be presented before the school board. It got a resolution adopted by the city commission, and I think they got a pizza party. And so, I mean, previous censuses, that's what they did, just for the elementary school, not just in McAllen. I don't think they did it. Yeah, they had the apple with the worm coming out. Yeah, they still got the posters someplace, right?
We'll leave questions for a little bit later because we can talk all day, but we want to do this activity. So Blanca, go ahead.
I was going to say, and the pizza party was probably the greatest incentive for those students, right? It wasn't anything else but that pizza party. All right, so a couple of things that I want to mention. As you know, we took a photograph earlier today, and it's important to not just get a snapshot of who lives, you know, in the United States on April 1st, 2020, but it's also important to make sure that we're documenting what it is that's happening in different areas, and that was the purpose of that photograph. Then we also have a camera back here that is taping the activity that's taking place today. So we wanted to make sure that you're aware of that and that we have these photo release forms. So we have to go with media protocol ourselves. And we have these photo release forms that we're gonna pass out because we wanna make sure that it's okay that you're on the, you know, on the video. But please,
And we officially are not taping this, but we're still gonna ask you to sign this. The entity taping this today is City of McAllen, so the video belongs to City of McAllen, just so y'all know.
Do you want to just put your signature on here and print your name, and then our media specialist will go ahead and complete the rest of it. Please do write in some kind of identifier, so if you happen to say, you know, no, I'm not comfortable with this, put a little note on that sheet, like don't sign it, but put a note on there, and then we'll make sure that that gets hazed over or something, your image gets hazed over. So we just want to make sure that you're aware of all of that, okay? And one of the really nice things.
on it.
Spot on there, yeah. But we don't want you to be invisible. We want you to be. All right, so now the other thing, while we're getting those out and you have a chance to complete those before you leave, and then you'll want to leave those probably back in this room.
Yeah, actually, we can complete it real quickly and get it to me, because I'm already writing the messaging, because there's not a lot of people doing census solutions workshops in the entire U.S.
That's
so
right.
I just want to commend you on your leadership to be able to do that. So we definitely want to share with our region how wonderful the City of McAllen is doing. If you could put a little identifier, because I don't know all of you, like a red T-shirt or purple, blazer, then I can just make sure I get your name right on our little right. And I'll send this back out to Kimberly with the City of McAllen so she can share that with you in case you want to share it with your own organizations and committees.
Excuse me.
Yes, ma'am.
You want some kind of identifier?
I know who you are.
But where did you want us to put that?
Just anywhere in the form is fine. But if you can just print and sign, and then if you don't want to have your image used, then just let us know. And then just put like I'm with Lupe or Linda, I know who she is. I know most of you.
Something like I'm wearing a yellow top.
Yes, that is perfect.
And even if you don't want to be a part of it,
Yes.
that way we can figure out a way
So we know,
to.
we'll put a census fan in front
Once you sign the forms, you can just go ahead and pass them to your right, and then we'll collect them at the end of the table.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Pass them to the right, is that what they're doing?
And if you want to be famous, this is your chance.
One of the things that happens with these write-ups and photographs is then they might get picked up by national, they might get picked up actually in our regional newsletter. I see a lot of Texas in there. But wouldn't it be great to have that photograph that we just took? It's just such a great photograph. So with the sign in the front, shows everybody working together. So it may get picked up, and those regional newsletters come back and they're shared with key stakeholders, congressional offices, and then really let them know what's going on. But so it's in the hopes that it gets picked up by our own media team. Probably will, right, Delilah? Yeah, we're cross our fingers.
I know yesterday Constitution Day was pretty big. Yeah.
All right, so just pass your forms down. Will you hold?
Okay. Albert.
Texans love their air conditioning. Sure do. But not that cold, huh?
One more thing, while you guys are doing that, we would love for you, like we were talking about, to share the information for the census. And if you want to co-brand with us, we have a lot of forums, for example, like we're hiring, right, 8,000 people in this area. So maybe you would like to use your logo from your nonprofit, and then our census stuff, then we do require for you to sign a logo user agreement, because it's so important that you guys use your brand correctly and as well ours. And so if you have not signed a logo user agreement, if you could raise your hand and I'll give you my card. And I will go ahead, if you just email me right now, I will forward it to you. It is electronically, you can sign it electronically as well. And so I can get that for you. I know, for example, Lupe is having a loteria, or you already kind of. And so they use our logo. So we have a lot of different colors, Spanish and English taglines. Like what you see here on the fan, we can send this to you in black and white, and then in Spanish and English, and then also in our Census blue color. If you want any other stuff, then you can meet with me, and I can show you all our approved materials list, which is like over 40 pages long of PDF files, bookmarks. We have a whole bunch of different things that we already have made, and you can just add your logo on it, so you don't have to worry about it.
Regarding logos, like the flyer that we have here over the Census Forum and anything that's local, how do we become like a sponsor?
You're in the right place.
So Ms.
Guys,
Kimberly, you meet with Kimberly before you leave.
Okay, good. Great.
What, Nedra's here. Nedra, you have a sponsor for the forum.
Kendra, yeah, because we really plan to aggressively pursue completion of the census for all of our members. So I have about 6,000 of them. We would love to have our logo placed on here, or sponsorship includes monetary and times, whatever, we can talk about that. Because I'd love for the clubs to be
I almost
represented.
have my sponsor package for my sponsor thing ready. The monitor's helping us on that.
Awesome.
Their marketing person. Belinda, I don't have your up-to-date information. I think I've got information on you, but it's out of date.
Okay.
You're still where you were.
With the club with the boys and girls?
No, I mean living.
Oh, yes.
You're my neighbor.
Okay.
Connection. She should just go down the neighborhood.
Let's just take your sponsors.
It's a small world.
Oh, okay.
And you're over on Carnation Avenue.
No. We all know where. I'm on Hawk Circle, everyone, if you want to go. No, I'm on Hawk Circle.
You're on where?
Hawk
That's
Circle.
the opposite
So
of
over off
the
the main street
company
between Dove and Trenton.
Okay, I knew I had it.
Yeah, so
if
I'll
you
let
really
you
want
know
to,
stuff.
you just
But I'd
go
love
up
for
to
our
that
logo,
person.
just for us to kind of work together on that.
I have my information up there, so you
Very
can
cool.
send it to me.
Okay, thanks,
And
Kendra.
we're getting going on the sponsors as soon as I get Crystal at the monitor to clean it up and make it look nice.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, so everybody got their forms in? Let's move on to the next topic. So what we're gonna do is now we're gonna be at the point of splitting up into 4 different groups. And yeah, we're gonna count off. And the point of this, and we're gonna talk about tools and what you're gonna need, okay? So in your packet, so you wanna look at your packet, this blue,
folder.
yep. Right there, there is a document that is called commitment sheet. Okay. So take that out.
What's it look like? You sure it's in here?
It's called commitment sheet.
And one for each.
The other thing that we're handing out is a form. Let's see here.
The commitment sheet is on there?
Double check.
It should be on the right side. Or it's the end.
It's just a PowerPoint.
It's stapled. It's back here. Just go right to the very end. Go to your back. It's called commitment.
Oh, commitment sheet. There it is.
Your packets of your
All right, got it.
It would be on the, is it on the right side or is it?
Kind of like,
It's stapled. It's
Stapled?
kind of like 5 sheets from the end.
It's also on the left side of the packet folder. It's also on the left side of the folder.
Ed, could you tell us where you found it?
It's like 1,
You might be able
On
to.
the right side.
3.
On the right side? Okay.
The 6th page from the
It's
end.
right behind and it works out.
So it's on the right, go to the staple document that's on the right-hand side of your folder, and it is the 5th or 6th page.
From the end.
6th page from the end.
Right.
I also have it separate. I suggest next time for the page numbers on the.
Yeah, so it's.
Never mind.
Yeah, yeah, it's.
Never mind.
All right.
There we are, okay.
I guess I had to double check myself, you know.
Is it there? It's there, it's there. Okay. Has everybody found it? No? Okay. Who, raise your hand, who needs help? Because it's very important, we're all gonna use it. Okay?
Any help with that?
And the other thing is, we just handed out this form right here, and it is actually a 2-pager, but we only, you know, at this point need you to take this for the exercise. And it says there are many ways your organization can get involved and support the 2020 census.
Right.
So in combination, those 2 forms, you're going to come up with some ideas. So there's going to be some questions that you're going to be addressing when you break out as a group, and then you're going to take these 2 forms and then you're going to complete them, you know, as a group. But this one in particular is for your organization. Even if you're already a partner with the Census Bureau, you probably have programs like the Boys and Girls Club. Let's say you're already a partner perhaps, right? You're working with us. But you might have different programs within the Boys and Girls Club, and then we can reach out and use this form that you complete and figure out how we can work together with your different programs. So even your individual programs can be a partner of the census, not necessarily just the overarching one. Like City of McAllen, can you imagine if we were just to say, oh, City of McAllen it's just City of McAllen. No, there's a lot, there's Parks and Rec, there's the libraries, there's all, public works, there's all kinds of possibilities.
So like an example would be Texas Tropical. They have many different departments, like they have a veterans program, primary care, they just have many, many different programs.
So before you leave, we definitely want to have these back. Why? Because then, as partnership specialists, we can do some follow-up. And the other thing is this can help, so the commitment sheet and then this discussion we're going to have as a larger group when you come back from your smaller groups, all of that is going to be potentially used, and I say potentially because I don't, you know, live here and I'm not working with the CCC right now, but it can be used for an action plan. Like it can be incorporated into an action plan. There's something that's, you know, that's striking, something that's, you know, fresh, that can be easily implemented by the committee. They could potentially say, you know what, we need to implement that in our action plan, all right? But for us in the Census Bureau, we want to make sure that we are capturing as many organizations and their sub-organizations so that we can work with you directly, okay? So that's what that's for. All right, so what we're gonna do is we are going to count off, and we've got some flip charts here. You'll want to take some markers with you to your group, and we're gonna count off by 4s, okay? So
we'll be here to help.
Yeah.
In your groups.
We'll be floaters, we'll be walking around if you have questions in your group. You also have on your agenda, so pull out your agenda for today. On the back are the challenge questions. So if you haven't looked at those, that's okay, all right? We just wanted to make sure that you had them there, plus I wanted to save paper. And make sure that in your group that you select one of those. So there's 6 topics, 6 challenge statements or questions. You pick one, but you'll probably have a little extra time to pick a second one. So we'll want you to go ahead and discuss after we, you know, divide up, discuss your questions and the challenge statements. Come back to the larger group. You'll select a scribe, you know, somebody to take notes, and then who's going to report out. It doesn't have to be just one person. It could be 2 people. You can have your whole group report out. But we'll do a report out for each of the groups, okay? We will have, I think we have enough room for probably 2 groups here and then maybe 2 groups in the other room. There's another room that Albert will show you where that is. So group 1 and 2 will just meet here, and then the 3 and 4 will meet in another room.
It's okay.
So these are from which groups?
2.
1, 2, 3. This is 2.
Maybe we should identify. Here.
Yeah, let's do that. Which one is this right here?
This is either 4 or 3.
That's
4.
four.
Oh, you know.
And it's question
Two.
4.
That one's 2.
Two.
This is number 2, group
Yes.
2. Okay,
Yes.
not 2, that is, okay. And which question did you work with on this?
4.
Question, oh, okay, so number 4, question, okay. And then number
Question 6.
Okay.
Group 1, question 1.
That was group 3, question 5.
Okay.
Grace.
Question 5.
Right.
All right. So volunteers, which group would like to go first for a report out? And you can do that from where you're sitting. You can come over here, you know, bring a couple people with you. So who? Yes.
Can I add
Yeah.
that as we're going through,
Uh-huh.
if other people have suggestions, we can add them
Item over
here.
here, okay.
And then we can just have many more ideas.
That's great.
So Martha will be our
And you'll just
scribe.
identify on this board here which
Which group
question,
and
which
which
question, right? Yeah.
Okay, we were group 3, and question number 5 was to engage grassroots community advocates creating awareness to undercount young children. And we had a lot of discussion about the Rome and the hard to count areas, and we came to kind of another understanding that our CDBG areas are low mod areas that pretty much coincide with the Rome hard to count areas, and that was the target tracks were FM 495 to South McAllen. And we're trying to reach the children and identify these grassroots community advocates. And so we say, well, we had 2 Head Start facilities in the area. We had the Boys and Girls Club down at the McAllen Brown Center. We had the PVC, that's Palmview Community Center and Library, that were all targeting young children, families with young children. We also had, in the city of McAllen, we have houses that provide daycare facilities. We can get a list of all the different conditional use permits that have active daycares as far as targeting areas. Again, in our targeted 495 South McAllen. Also, we had like 5 churches: Our Lady Perpetual Help, Our Lady of Sorrows, St. Joseph the Worker, Sacred Heart, San Diego down in Balboa. And I think because Balboa and Southwest McAllen has always been a target area that we receive community funds, and the city's always interested in that area, we really would focus in. It's an area that the city has always focused in on its various activities and infrastructure. We also, and these provided childcare and with CCD classes, again, targeting the children and the families with the children. McAllen Independent School District, that's all in the McAllen Independent School District area. We also had some private charter schools. I guess OLS has a school in the area. Taylor Institute down there on Houston. Maybe others that we could hit. There was some clinics, some WICs. Hospitals had an idea that maybe from newborns from January to April, we could get something included in their nutritional package or their newborn welcoming kits. And also someone was saying that they do training for mothers that don't forget to count their kids. I don't see it on here, but we did have a great idea about in December with the La Posada ceremonies. We could focus in that, Mary and Joseph had to go to Bethlehem to get counted in the census, right? Yeah. And so even Jesus got counted, right? Even Jesus counts. And then they ran off to Egypt. Became undocumented in Egypt. Right, so little twist there. I think Martha got that one going. Ways to share the information, mail distribution to the different conditional use permits and organizations, training the trainers, ideas of putting signage for the partners that were going to provide assistance. And then we had another great idea, where do the kids go to have fun? Well, they go to Peeper Piper, they go to grocery stores. Maybe those would be areas in the target area that we could provide, some emphasis on getting out the message and making sure that they count the kids, because it was to
And have them put the signs.
The yard signs.
the yard
The
signs
yard signs.
for the assistance centers for people that are partnerships.
Especially to make target, I mean, we decided that it's too big, we needed to target areas we know that it was more needed. That's the way we do it in an organization. So instead of looking at the whole city, we just targeted a particular area where we know that there's a concentration of these families who have young children who have been traditionally undercounted. So I mean, that's why we chose that particular area, and have yard signs in those areas, more yard signs, because that's what we want to promote the most count.
Right. And I guess the yard signs would be in that March beginning, maybe in March 12th, maybe in March and April, and then the signs would have to go.
Yeah,
because
it's only for that short period of
a
time.
30-day grace period from the city commission.
And also asking the churches to see whether they can be a count area, they can provide a space where people get counted. Maybe in churches and Sundays when people go to mass, takes the opportunity to get counted.
We have been invited. They're willing to work with us, and actually, I already have approval for my staff to work Sundays.
Awesome.
So they can, yes, what you do. So they can already go to churches and to other venues on Sundays. Blanca wanted to add something.
Yeah, I have a question. So in reference to the yard signs, right? You said March, April, then they have to be taken down.
Well, I mean, technically, they may be illegal, so I think maybe we might.
No, well, what we're gonna.
Steve there, right? Steve's there.
No, but one of the things that I think we're gonna do was,
Our code enforcement officer.
one thing that we had talked about was maybe approaching those high traffic areas and ask the property owner, we can put a yard sign in front of their home.
Yeah.
Have the businesses, like for instance, Peter Piper, have their yard sign put it. We want to visualize it. My whole thinking was to have it all down Bicentennial, major thoroughfares have it bombarded with yard sales. Well, that's not gonna happen because Steve won't allow it. But
No,
we
we
can.
always can, if we get permission from city, we can.
Just get.
Okay, we can get permission, that's what we want to do. Because the thing with people, like somebody said, 7 times you learn.
Yeah.
When you see it 7 times, you're gonna, that's gonna be the trigger, like, that you gotta do this, the thing.
So the reason I was wondering about that is because households can self-respond even when we're out there knocking on the doors. So those signs or visuals, they can still be up beyond April. And then for Rome, because you're thinking about this response outreach area mapper, that is an excellent tool to be able to determine, for example, for the census tracts that have a high number of small children, right? Families, small children, 0 to 5. You can determine what those areas are. But at the same time, you can go ahead and canvass an entire area. You don't have to stick to a particular census tract or certain blocks. You know where those areas are. So we will be monitoring, just like all of you, online. It won't be Rome, but it will be something similar to Rome, and you'll be able to tell what that participation rate looks like.
Okay.
So when you know that, hey, the participation is not that high, we expect it to be higher, then you got to rally together and figure out what are we going to do.
One thing that we haven't discussed is on your awesome idea sheet is, can we ask Peter Piper or any of these organizations that work with this hard to count population if they can be a response site? So if we can send volunteers to put up a table, bring some laptops, and help the community respond. So that's just one way to expand it.
I think I missed out the grocery stores. We have like Reuben and McAllen
Yes.
Grocery down there on 23rd Street that are heavily targeted for that area. And I think the city commission's kind of direction for our complete count committee was to kind of reach out to the hard to count areas. Not that everybody counts, counts, but they wanted to give special attention to certain areas.
Thank you, Ed.
In terms
Can
of,
we give Ed a round of applause?
My reaction to the grocery stores, we have to think outside the box, right? or sometimes create our own boxes. So I recall in 2010, I said, how in the world am I gonna get, the messaging to this particular area? Hi Guatemalan, they speak Quiche, and so then what did I do? I talked to the business owners, the grocery stores, and they allowed some of those key leaders to come and give messages on their intercom system.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, they just kind of turned that over, and we helped prepare the messages, and then they translated them. But think about what those grocery stores could do. They could actually, just do every now and then do these intercom messages. Hey,
We
remember to
also
get
have a lot
counted.
of meat markets here
Meat
that
markets.
reach
Right.
that hard to count, the carnicerias. Yeah, lots of meat
Delia's,
markets.
tamales.
How do we check like Sprint,
Tamales.
like Sprint, Verizon, all those different cell phone companies that
Absolutely.
they have a lot of traffic that come in, and maybe
Yeah.
they can provide internet access to people to be able to respond. in
Well,
these
the
stores.
store could be a response site.
Yeah.
Because they've got free Wi-Fi for everybody.
Right.
I mean, people could use the sample phones. They just gotta go to the URL. Okay, so next group number 2. Who's gonna report out for group number 2?
Okay. Well, we selected number 6, how might we engage college students who live on campus to create awareness campaign and to minimize the undercount of that demographic. So we started thinking about targeting student groups or student governments. They're very passionate. They might be already knowledgeable of what the census is, the purpose. So targeting student groups at all our local or regional colleges, UTRGV, STC, Texas A&M, CHCP, Our Lady of the Lake, Wayland Baptist, and vocational colleges. And then something that is very common in college students, of course, is social media, right? Instagram, Facebook, Snapchat. We added some gaming, right? Some ads. One of our ideas was also doing a contest video, YouTube for likes or a post, maybe giving a giveaway with different gift cards from businesses that are local, right? You get the most likes, you get this basket with full of gift cards. And then we also talk about one that I think is really helpful because I was a college student not long ago. It's when you have a special project from a professor and they promise you extra credit. I would do it. I would do it. If you send me to go clean up a park and that means 10 extra points, I would. So maybe targeting some professors and talking about creating a special project for their students. And I'm pretty sure it would work. At least they're gonna get the knowledge, and maybe it could be a community service. Go out into these community events and pass out flyers. They can also be employed, but they can do it as a community service as well. Also putting up some signs where the college or younger crowd is, like coffee shops. We have now, it's very common that not only Starbucks, but we have a lot of local ones. So put in their flyers or a poster. We talk about also some gift cards, right? Yeah. For participation. Also promoting Uber and Lyft. Oliver was mentioning that during the voting season they were giving free rides too. So maybe he was also mentioning maybe just doing a campaign with these 2 businesses and saying, well, can you have your drivers have some flyers there, or just bringing it up in conversation. Now it's very common that the younger crowd get, when they go party, they get an Uber and Lyft. So they'll be at least able to hear about it. We also talk about promoting to athletic departments and different games that they are on. HESTIC, music and art events, concerts is very common, maybe allowing Bert Ogden or State Farm allowing a little booth so they can promote. And
The college professors and researchers also. We talked about talking to the professors and explaining the importance and how how that relates to researching and how that relates to the population and federal grants for universities and colleges as well.
Yeah, usually if your professor shares something with you, you listen,
Yes.
usually,
Usually.
right? Usually.
that's the hope.
That's the hope, yeah.
And I think that's it for us.
Thank you. Anything you all would like to add to reaching the college students that we can put up? I think that they would be a very good pool of volunteers for our response sites. You know, most of them are bilingual, they're tech savvy, they run circles around me. I was just at the university the other day and Albert and I were walking around the library and the grounds, and there was not one student that wasn't on a laptop. Outside, in the library, at UTRGV, they're all on the laptop. So that's their new tool. It's not a notebook anymore, right?
We also, sorry, I forgot.
Go ahead.
We also talk about an ambassador group.
Yeah.
When you're a college student, you don't have much experience in the job market. So anything that you can add into your resume is good. So in my past job, we had a program called Health Ambassadors, right? And they're volunteers that they are recognized. We'll put them up in the monitor and we will give them a shirt and an emblem. So they would be committed to pass out flyers and promote any goal or initiative, maybe having a program that we have even maybe high school students and up.
Maybe for recruitment too, why not?
Right.
The college kids that are over 18, if they're US citizens, they might qualify for your 8,000 jobs.
Right.
Oh, of course, we absolutely want them to apply.
Mhm.
Absolutely, yes.
I want to add something to that list. These days, what has become popular is the idea of people that are social influencers and bringing celebrities to campus or having local celebrities recite a census message. These young people listen to those people. So it would be good to have somebody that has large followings on social media, give messages on how important it is for people to participate in the census.
As long as they're not too controversial. We want to stay on point and on topic. Alrighty, so anybody else wants to add to college students?
What about Spotify, Pandora? You can choose by demographics and who you want to reach, so you can put it by age for college
Is that paid
students.
for?
Paid for.
Okay, so paid for Spotify and Pandora, because it'll run local ads, right?
Yeah.
So are college students still reading, they have college papers and radio stations?
They might, I think they read their newsletters online.
has a newsletter and a Snapchat.
Online, and the newsletter's digital, right? Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And I know that right now, I believe the Census Jobs link is on one of their student portal pages right now. Active, yeah. All right, so let's go on to group 3. Who would like to present?
We were, we did group 3
Oh, we
already.
did?
That was group 4.
Oh, group 4.
Who's group 4?
Who was in group 4? Don't be shy. Come on up, come on down.
Everybody in the front row, it looks like.
There's a pattern here. We all get A pluses.
We had question number 4, and it said, what activities can you do within the different stages within census, right? The first one was the education phase. So we went ahead and we did, our ideas were like attending health fairs, which you guys already do because we see you at multiple places, and passing out flyers, and also guest speakers at these events can also create awareness and education to the community. Videos on how to do census. I believe you guys already have a video, so maybe presenting that a little bit more. And going to Jamaica's and Hestic, right, because you want to get the different geographic people. And then the awareness phase, talk to community partners to see if they can add any census links to websites and posters on break rooms. Infographics, and then also again like going to community and churches and yard signs. For motivation phase, we went ahead and we had another person in our group, but she had to leave early. She was talking about maybe giving out buttons, so whenever they complete the census, you know how when you go to vote and it says yeah vote or something, but something for like for them to give like to their children, because they want to make that going on, so they can be like, oh, look what my parent did, right? And so they tell everybody else, so that way they could go as well. And then again with the yard signs, So the reminder phase, we went ahead and we said maybe something like postcards being sent out every now and then, constantly. Maybe that would it's a reminder. Hearing them on the radio, commercials, billboards, and social media platforms like they were talking about. And for the thank you phase, we went ahead and we did also postcards as well. We kind of drew it out with a big thank you. And posters, I don't know what that was. They did that after I left. But that was for question number 4.
Anything you want to add to that question, Martha?
Yeah, I wanted to remind, because I live in the city of McAllen, that you can use the water bill, the bill that, to send those reminders, because I noticed that when it's colorful, like, it takes it gets more attention.
Yeah,
So whenever you have an ad added to the bill and it has color, I noticed that I read it faster. So I think that would be a good way to remind people and to put something in the water bill, for several times, right? Change it around so it would not become the same thing, but I think.
And they have. I think it's been what, maybe 8 months or 6 months? It's been a long time.
But that's what I said, that you have to be
Since
changing
January?
it because otherwise.
Mark, how many people have downloaded the app for
Yes,
the water bill? How many people have downloaded the app for the water bill?
We're probably up to about 3,500.
Maybe add some kind of diagram, maybe a message to that app for the water bill?
Yeah, maybe we'll do something like that.
The other thing that we're doing, is that we add in the census information and any receipts that we give out. So in the bottom, you can add a little message and just, we add in these, to our bill, to our receipts. So whenever people pay, we add, remember to get count, right? So simple things like that, so we can start hitting the people the 7 times or more, 7 times, any way that we can.
Yeah, when we started,
go ahead.
The city, we included a tagline, so every time we email outside the city, we have, make sure to be counted by the census, so that's part of our acknowledgement.
Is that in your email? Is that your
It's in
signature
the
line?
bottom,
That's
for the
great.
entire
It's added
city.
to the tagline that we
Uh-huh.
use, so.
Yeah. And just make sure, Martha, that as we get closer, that all your communications have the 2020 census.gov.
Yeah, we already signed the release form.
Okay.
Release form, so we can use it.
Are we missing one group to report out?
Yes, there is.
Okay.
Group 1.
Group 1.
Group 1.
Before we go into that, I just wanted to add something to the education phase here in this group. I think that we missed, I was surprised that I didn't see listed on their institutions, educational institutions. We gotta go to the people that do education best, right? And so those are the school districts. The school districts have the most amount of reach to the community because they can target the students, the parents, and the faculty, staff members, and also the community at large.
They're the largest
We
employers.
have to be able to engage the school districts.
We have it on our
Question 4, I had a question on foster children. How are they gonna be charged if they're moved from place to place, foster home to foster home shelter?
And it's where they live and sleep most of the time. So they have to go back to those residency rules is what it's called. We should probably issue that. I mean, some folks have that, it's online, so we could get that
We can
out
share it to
afterwards.
this group, right, Kim? Okay. Yeah, so it depends on where they live a majority of the time. So it could be with their foster parent or it could be in the group home, it all depends.
And the other thing that gets complicated is you have a lot of families that, you've got a lot of divorced or separated families and children or part of the time with mom, part of the time with dad or grandma or somebody else. We have to go back and always consider where is it that they live and sleep most of the time. So we're not the ones who are going to dictate that, but we have the residency rules and we just have to leave it up to
the
those families
question
to make
is
that decision.
about people that have just moved to let's say, they just moved in. So this is going to be their primary residence. Where they lived the past year, well, it was someplace else, but if they're new residents and this is going to be their primary residence, they should be counting here because this is where they're going to be staying, right?
Well,
For new residents.
that becomes maybe the April 1st. Where are they?
Yeah,
April 1st,
where are
right?
they? April 1st.
Yes, yeah. And
And
it has
it's
to
really
be, that
their-
messaging has to come from the CCC, the community leaders.
The majority of the time, Ed, they will put their address here,
Their
where
current.
they've moved to. They'll put their
Okay.
current address, yeah. The ones who usually don't do that are Winter, Texas. They put their
They'll
back
put their
home.
back home.
Yeah, but
if
there's
you
a lot
take
of Winter
if you
Texans who end
Take
up
a look
staying
at the
here.
Rome data as to who were the census tracts with the highest return rates. It was the Winter Texans, the mobile home parks. They had the highest return. It wasn't in McAllen, it was Alamo or someplace like that. But you might want to think about what was it about that elderly generation that were responsible, you know, the old World War II people, you know, the best of America and all that stuff, why they had such a high return rate, because they felt an obligation to do it.
Goes back to that civic duty.
How are we doing the migrants, the ones that are recently coming over, or the?
The undocumented?
Or the people that are being detained?
What do you mean, Dida?
How are we counting that?
The ones that come across and they're at the
Detention center?
detention centers.
That is administrative task, so we ask the governmental entity to give us the information.
Oh, okay.
It's part of the group quarters.
Yeah, we don't do that
But I think
ourselves as a
For our
partnership.
area,
Yeah.
it's the undocumented residents
Right.
that we need to make sure that this has nothing to do with, you know, where you're a citizen. If you're a resident and you're here, you get counted here.
And then the question of citizenship is not.
It's
in
not
the
even on there,
question.
but
That's right.
yeah, even if it was on there, I mean, they still would put down.
But
the
that
thing.
was a very fear factor.
Fear factor.
If there are people has to be aware that the question is not in there and that they don't have to deal with the question.
And we
So
also
that-
have professionals. I remember we were at a LRGVDC meeting, and I hope Matt doesn't mind that I'm talking about Matt Ruschek, but we went to college together, and he said in 2010, he was here, he had come from Poland, I believe, to go to school here, and he stayed here, but he hadn't changed something. And
paper.
so he didn't fill out the census because he thought it
That's
didn't
not
apply
right.
to him.
Right.
So we have engineers here from India, from China, who live in McAllen, who are here on a work visa. They may not be U.S. citizens, but they have to be counted because this is their primary residence.
That goes back to your Article 1 or Section
Section
2,
all
that everybody gets
living in
counted
the US.
irregardless whether their documentation. And that's the drumbeat that has to be done for those people that, no, this is your responsibility to do
And
that.
that's why we take the foreign-born calculation and the quick facts, because we realize that that's a population that has to be educated even more, because they may not have a census from where they're from. You know, at least, you know, some of our residents know what the INEGI is in Mexico, and they know that they do a census over there. But there may be other people from other countries who don't know what a census count is.
So
Yes,
that, doesn't that bring up the question about shouldn't we be having forums to be publicly informing the people in forms of maybe a pachanga like they do for the political rallies, or I don't know, whatever works best in those hard to
I
count
say we
areas.
put it, I say we put it down.
Down there.
Great idea.
Yeah,
I want to add something else, Martita, and you'll maybe have more insight on this, but when our immigrant community hears, like, from an attorney saying how this is beneficial for them, how this could help them in the future, in their case, it has a lot of weight when it's coming, especially if they're hearing it, like, on the radio, they're tuning in, right? And they hear it on the radio and they see it's an attorney, that it has a lot of weight for
Right.
them. So an attorney.
Yeah, definitely, we need to use all of the ways, right, all the means that we can give their that information. And coming to Pachangas, we're probably more successful in the events that are already happening. We need to find out what events are already happening, because for people to come out to different events for specific census, people do not turn out to come. So we need to be sure that we look at what is coming up and try to insert ourselves in all the events that they already planned. For, you know, so that's when we're going to be the most successful. And I don't know, is the city of McAllen has people that are going to be at those tables, or the U.S. Census are going to have many in that table? I just have a question.
The response tables?
Yeah, like when you have an event in South McAllen and then we need somebody from this, some information to pass out on the census. Who's going to be managing
So we
that?
have multiple departments. We have the recruiting assistant department, which is operations. Then we have partnership. We can get student volunteers, and we can get City of McAllen to request people as well. So we are going to need volunteers.
We've done complete count committee members have gone to these events.
Okay, so you have your own people. That's
Yeah,
not
we
bad.
have.
But we need volunteers though. We
Okay,
need more volunteers.
yes, okay. We just
But, you
wanted to know who was gonna man those.
I was gonna say it's really, really super important, because right now we're talking about like an inventory of events, right? Between now and let's say May of next year, right? So if you know that, and then Census Bureau is doing some, and then the city is doing some, so the complete count committee, but it is everybody's responsibility, whatever organization you exist in and you're a part of, to do your own inventory and figure out, okay, well, this is what our organization is doing. Let's just incorporate 2020 census into it, right? But if you're talking about maybe like one of these pachangas, these forums, right, then it might take a combination, 2 or 3 organizations to work together and to host that and to coordinate it, because potentially it's just not something that you're already doing. It's not on the schedule.
And if you do want to have volunteers, you want them to be from your local community.
Right, yeah, no, I was just wondering.
They're gonna
because-
feel
Yeah,
more
because
comfortable
all
with.
events that we can choose and agree to do,
Yeah.
we want to manage.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because that's what we commit to do.
Yes.
So we agreed that we're gonna do all these, and what we did really, we took inventory of all the events that we have during the whole year and inserted the census in that, instead of adding new
Yes.
events, because it's hard for us to do new things. And so we did the same things, we just tweak it in a way that it's going to be inserted in the census now. Go back to if there is a Chamber of Commerce should be included in this, because every business should be promoting it. That's what I told the City of Alton. Every business in Hanway and here in City of Alton should have a sign. If you have electronic signs or you have signs that you can just put in your table, every business should be promoting the census. And so I think that Chambers of Commerce should be included in this, and including attorneys. We can ask attorneys, can you include and you talk something about the census?
They have the, what is it, like the bar association. They have the different associations.
Alton has a great flea market.
Right.
You could set up a table right at the entrance where people go in with the census.
Yeah, they're already.
And the one in Alamo, didn't you say that they're using their digital board over there in Alamo? But then
they have the Hidalgo County campaign.
They have the Hidalgo County campaign
on their digital board, and it's right next to the expressway.
They could we could try to get a table over there at that Alamo flea market is huge.
We're working with Dr. Millard. She
Get
has
somebody to go over there, right?
a table there. Yes.
Good.
Yes.
How about messaging at our bridges,
Yes, I think that was already in the
hours
works.
line, we can do messaging at the bridges.
Yes.
That sounds like
We have like 10 more minutes because then we have to wrap this up. So let's go on to the next group. Thank you, this group. Which group was it?
Group 1.
Group 1 is next.
Yeah, group 1 is next.
Yeah, group 1. But thank you to group 4. Thank you. Group 1?
Okay, for group 1, we focused a lot on what each organization of our organizations is doing already or planning to do. We didn't think a lot of outside the box, I guess. So I'll ask help from each of our group member if you want to add to what you're doing. But spread awareness about confidentiality. We use publicity and marketing to educate the community. Publicity, traditional and social media ads, including the DJs and anchors because they are like trusted members of the community. Press release, flyers, interviews for marketing. Identifying trusted members to share information. I know as far as like MHP Salud, we have our promotoras de salud distributing the information. They have group sessions, they have home visits that they can, their clients, they can relay that information to their clients. Ads, social media, I know McAllen Library have the farmers markets. At Hope, they're gonna have TVs running information in the lobby area. Also the McAllen Library, they have the coloring sheets. Do you want to explain a little bit more?
In October, they're going to be available. The coloring sheets for kids.
Oh, yes.
Wow.
You have the link. That's already on census.gov.
Yeah, and so also focusing on identifying different partners. Also at the library having that census table, and then also at McAllen Housing Authority, the monthly meetings to the residents to share that information. and then whatever you all want to add to what we didn't think about.
And this was for confidentiality. So we do have an 8x11 that's in English and in Spanish that talks about confidentiality, but I think she touched on a great point, which was the trusted voices, the people from the local community. If they say, yes, Title 13 protects your information. Yes, we only share it after 72 years. It's only shared in statistical format when it's collected. We all take an oath, even the people who come door to door, right, to follow up with you. It's all confidential, and we cannot share it with any other government agency. I know that we have a marketing campaign that's going to be released in January, and I was fortunate enough to be part of the focus group. So they had a focus group where they showed the commercials to people from the Valley, and they asked them for their feedback, and they were in Spanish. So some of the commercials, even brought that up. There were like 5 guys in a bar drinking beer. And they're talking about the census, and one of them tells the other gentleman, you can share your information on this form. Nobody's going to find out, not even La Migra. So they were very specific with the terms they used and with those commercials. And the people that they had in those focus groups were different generations, first generation, second generation, third. And it was very, very powerful advertising. So confidentiality is going to be very important. And if you all tell them, I feel it's safe to do it, I think it's safe. I think a great idea also is like showing a city official or an elected official filling out a paper form and like doing an interview and showing them do that. Look, I did it, I wanted to do the paper form because that's my prerogative, right? And here I'm stuffing it and I'm mailing it back.
Well, also, maybe on confidentiality, you ought to focus to the fact that if you're worried about somebody coming to your door, you need to respond.
Yeah.
If you respond, then nobody's going to come to your door.
Right.
So if you kind of beat that into them, say, hey, if you're undocumented, the first thing you want to do is respond, because then you don't have to worry about anybody coming to your house.
Well, yes and no. Yes and no, Ed. Yes and no, because
if they come to the house, then they're not going to want it, right? So
well, there's a verification process.
When they come to the house, they're not going to be going to the door.
Yeah, there's a verification process that the Census Bureau employs.
They're responding to a questionnaire.
Right.
If they respond, then nobody should be coming. Oh,
the
verification.
Bureau will choose a random sample to come to their door.
They're not going to open the door for the verification.
Yeah. And then we also have the other surveys, American Community Survey. So we don't want them to not then answer a different survey.
Our focus should just be on the decennial census and forget about verification. Don't try to do verification.
Yeah.
Don't even talk about verification. Don't talk about all the other zillion questionnaires. You just talk about decennial, because that's the money and that's the apportionment. The other one, verification.
We have to. It's our job.
The verification is going to go like this. They're going to go to the door. Nobody's going to answer.
Yeah.
They go 3 times. Nobody answers. The next, they're going to go to the neighbor and say, "Do you know who lives next door?" They they got 3 people that live there.
They will call also. So the difference between tax returns and this is we do ask for your phone number on the census form. So they may not come to your door to verify. They may call on the phone. And the reason why American Community Survey is so important is because on Quick Facts, they use American Community Survey information to forecast the population growth.
I know, but that's really
right
now. It's just this. I think what we, in part of our complete count committee with Victor and everybody, he's been very specific to focus on decennial. That's the focus. And all the verification and the American Community Survey and all the other bazillion surveys that the Census Bureau does, we don't want it. Yes, there could be others, but those are the primary focus should just be on the decennial.
And I just wanted to add that that the whole thing on confidentiality, what you're doing right now to verify addresses, and the way that that you're very clear, identify as the census. We had a lot of calls in our organization saying, we feel much comfortable. So you are doing a really good job by putting all these signs in the cars, by using all these,
Yeah, this is the first time they have placards for the
Yeah.
car. They put a sign in the front windshield and in the back. And so when the people park at the end of the street, the neighborhood knows that's the census address canvasser that's going
So
around.
that's giving people a lot of confidence. So I know that some people were afraid, and right now when they see that, it's like, oh, we know that there's a census. And then the little paper, people have been bringing it to us and see what they said. It's confidential. They
And
can't
it's in
share this
English and in
information.
Spanish.
So you're doing a good job in that sense, and it really is working. So
And
thank you for
Xochitl
that.
and you all, the city of McAllen did that great press release that's running in, I think all the counties are seeing it, because I heard from Cameron County that they're seeing it as well. So very, very good job on this portion. Congratulations. Thank you.
I think this year, a couple of things we've doing
Yes,
as far as
Steve.
the marketing goes. Our subcommittee has met quite a few times with the library and MPU and Special's office. And one thing that we're doing this month is this month and next month, we're printing letters that are going to go inside of our tax statements to about 40,000 residents. It's English and Spanish, explaining the importance of the census.
A call to action, really.
Yeah. So we're doing that.
Because they get sent out when? In January? When?
No, right now.
November 1st.
Now. So
Yeah,
we're
they're working
printing
on it
those with the help of MPU, and my department purchased the paper, and the census translated the letters, so it's a front and back type of letters, because that'll be inserted and mailed out November 1st. Also for marketing, we're doing a job fair at the McAllen Public Library. I think we have 3 dates in October and 1 in November. So we're going to be working with Workforce Solutions and trying to get the message out about these job fairs and offer popcorn for people that come and kind of.
And thanks to your city, I'm getting to talk to all of the library directors for Hidalgo County. Today, actually at noon, I have to rush out of here and go to a room here in the building to talk to all the library directors, to talk about the fact that they have time restrictions on their computers, what resources they can use, if they can put up a table at their libraries. Because the smaller cities are going to need the library.
Is there restrictions on the computer for online just for libraries, or like?
So the libraries themselves have some time restrictions. But City McAllen has 3 hours. You should be able to do your questionnaire in 3 hours, right? But there's some other smaller libraries that have like 10 minutes, 15 minutes. So we just want to make sure that it's a resource to the community and they can feel that they can respond there where it's safe.
You need to let the county judge know that the city McAllen is doing that for our city taxes. That's just the city McAllen. He needs to get the county going to do some type of messaging with the county tax statement, because that's
a whole different. Huge.
Just, they don't have to do, they're not going to do McAllen County, because McAllen takes care of McAllen. But the rest of the county is not part of it. So that's, what's her name over there at the county?
Over area.
Paul, the complete count committee girl?
Oh, Erica.
Erica.
We've shared your sample.
Okay. With the tax office?
All 4 counties.
Okay, good.
And Steve, the department meetings are still going on, the presentations to all departments across the city?
Are we about almost done with that? Or?
Maybe halfway.
Okay. So we also came up with a program where Albert and his staff are presenting to all our city departments with the city of McAllen, a 15-minute presentation on the importance and just getting those messages out there.
I wonder if we could do it like when we used to do with the vote, that you know how the businesses will send a list of all the businesses who like challenge each business to allow people to in their own businesses. Well, it was at that it was voting, right? Each business has to allow it, and you give a percentage of who is the highest business who got counted. I wonder if there's something that we can work in the census by businesses. By business encourage their own people that works there and get a challenge
to respond at work.
Yeah.
To be able to have
Right.
half an hour.
We can get a community challenge going.
Yeah, something like that.
That'd be interesting.
We always wanted to raise our bar, because when you have 50% that businesses, we have to be higher. I mean, we do it. So I think that it puts a little,
Oh, yeah, healthy competition always works. Yeah.
Yeah, another thing that I wanted to promote with the city, one of the things that we're doing, every year we have a big march, and you know, in San Juan, I think we get about 1,000 people in March. In March, our march is gonna be in March. In March, we're gonna focus it on the census, because it's gonna be right in the middle. So we're gonna try to make that the focus point, and it's gonna be on the census. So like you were able to do some other activities that you can focus it particular, and the census depends on what time of the year it is. I mean, that's something that is going to help us.
Yeah, and you all are actually hosting the MAFO conference, the National Migrant Farm Worker Conference, and I'm on the planning committee for that national organization. They're going to have it at the Embassy Suites here next year, and they've agreed to be a response site for the conference, which I think is in April 20-something. So that's a huge win, you know, and they've chosen McAllen to host their national conference.
Wow,
yeah,
great.
Which is great.
Right.
Alrighty, so Blanca is going to talk about some forms that we need. So y'all are going to just do some forms real quick, and then we're going to go ahead and wrap it up. Thank you for your patience.
You probably already started these in your group work, but there's the commitment sheet that we need to get back. That was that one that was in that packet. And then this one. This is that one. We have extra copies here if you didn't get one. This is the one that says there are many ways your organization can get involved and support the 2020 census. Like I said, we know that some of your organizations, you're already partners in the census, right?
Right.
But we may not be aware of all of the different ways that you could support. So we know that many are serving on the CCC, but we don't know, like your particular organization, whether maybe you could provide, for example, it says encourage employees, constituents to participate, sponsor a 2020 census event, translate materials. There's all kinds of different options. Just be realistic when you complete this, right? Because then we will want to make sure that we do follow up. And as we're getting closer to Census Day, and not just Census Day, but even beyond that, then we will be contacting organizations who said they could do X, Y, and Z just to check in with you and see if you can assist in different areas that you have committed to. So if you could return this to us, it would be super helpful, along with that commitment sheet that you also completed.
So I'm going to pick up the commitment sheets. So if you have a commitment sheet for your group, I'm going to go ahead and pick it up.